Good evening and welcome to your health show. My name is Museo. Now, access to healthcare without barriers is a clearly defined right of people with disabilities as stated by the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. The success in medical procedures heavily hinges on accurate diagnosis of conditions and diseases requiring patients and health personnel to have a deep conversation or communication to achieve this goal. Ever wondered how deaf patients communicate with health personnel whenever they seek medical care? We are joined by Eunice Mboya, and we speak to her about the medical challenges that exist with the deaf community. And of course, on my left is our colleague. Her name is Lucy Maura, and she'll be helping us with interpretation. Welcome to the program. I'm Purity Museo. Once again, you can be part of our conversation at KBC Channel 1 News at Purity_Museo. The hashtag is your health. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the program. First, how are you? Hi.
Hi.
My sign name is Purity. I'm really delighted to have you here, and let's begin with maybe telling us just an introduction of what you do, where you work. Then we can begin our conversation this evening.
Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Eunice Mboya, and that is my sign name. Thank you for welcoming me here. Now, I am a business lady, but I am a trained teacher by profession. I'm also continuing with my education. Now, I also do business. I sell women clothes and children clothing. Thank you.
I know there are different causes of deafness, but maybe for you, situation, how did you find yourself here? Were you born like this, or did it occur while you were growing up?
Okay, thank you a lot for that question. For me, I was not born deaf. I became deaf when I was at the age of 13 years. Because I got sick, I suffered from meningitis. After doing my KCPE, when I was supposed to join my Form 1, my world changed. Then I became deaf because I got meningitis. That is how I became deaf.
How did you find out you had lost your hearing ability?
All right. When I got sick, I went to the hospital. I stayed there about 2 months. And when I was there, I was in a coma. And when I woke up, I found that I couldn't hear. So I could see my mother talking, but I couldn't hear what she is saying. So I asked my mother, "Why are you talking and I can't hear? What happened?" And she said, "No, maybe my voice is low. When I add my voice, maybe you can hear. And when you get well, you'll start to hear well." So everything changed, and I continued asking my mother, "Even when you shout, I can't hear you. What happened?" So we went back to the doctor, and the doctor explained, and he said, "You don't have anything wrong. It is because you got sick, meningitis, and maybe they gave you the medicine. So after a short while, you'll start hearing, maybe after 6 months. You'll become well again." So I went home hoping that after 6 months, I'll hear. But I continued waiting, and after a very a long time, I went back to the hospital, and they found that I am deaf.
Did they tell you that the condition was irreversible, or what did they mean by saying that you are now deaf? You know.
When we left hospital, the doctor said, "Go home You stay for around 6 months, then you will hear the changes. Then after that, I was taken for an assessment, the hearing assessment, and there, this happened after I stayed home for around 6 months. But my condition couldn't change.
Mm-hmm.
So I was asked to go back home, and I stayed about 3 months. I went back to the assessment, and then later I went to Homa Bay Hospital. After they did the checkup, they found that I can't hear.
Mm-hmm.
The sickness had destroyed my hearing.
How did it make you feel like a person, like a young girl who is growing up and you're going to Form 1? How did it affect you? How did it make you feel, Eunice?
I can say this condition was very serious. I remember very well that time I couldn't understand what is happening, but now I can explain my condition. I got depressed, and sometimes I could find myself in a world that I can't understand. So I was not able to understand what is happening, but now I can understand what happened, because this changed my life. I moved from home, I went to live with my relative. It changed my world. Before I felt as if everything has come to an end. But you see, before, when I used to hear, I used to go to the regular school, but now I was asked to go to a deaf school.
Yeah.
Because I've become deaf. But there were other children who were born deaf.
Yeah.
They were able to interact with their family. So when I go to school, I was interacting with the deaf children, and when I go home, my family can't understand the signs. Encouraged me and prayed for me until this point.
And so, how did you adjust and become who you are? I know you had to go to a deaf school, but I assume that time you had friends, your family, and then you can't hear them anymore. What was their reactions?
When I became deaf, I had to join a deaf school in Form 1. When I left hospital, I came home, but now there was no communication because I couldn't communicate. So I couldn't continue with the same friends which I had before. So I had to go and look for more other friends.
Since COVID-19 pandemic, the deaf community, or people who are deaf, communicate using signs. But now here COVID is, and we are required to put on the face mask. How was it? What was your first thought when you were told that, when the ministry announced that, you know what, you all have to put on a face mask?
True, Corona affected the deaf community in a different way. When the Ministry of Health announced that people must follow the rules, they forget us. Even the sign language interpreter was not there. So there was a communication barrier in the first place. So we used to see people with masks and we wonder what is happening. And until when we hear we have to wear the mask. So most of the deaf people used to remove the mask when they want to communicate, but we could hear that there is a danger of the virus which was spreading. The new rules. When Corona came here, that time I was in school. So you were told to go back home. And when I went to buy something in the supermarket, they asked me, you have to wash your hands, you must have your mask for you to enter in the supermarket. So I wondered, how will I communicate with the people who used to benefit from my lip reading if they broke and if I cover my mouth? So they said, you have to talk and you have to have your mask on. So I became rude because I couldn't understand what this person is saying. I had no prior experience. When I went out of the supermarket, they said you have to wash your hands again. So I used to forget everything and I was doing everything in the normal way. But now they said you have to wear a mask. Now the communication barrier and even the washing of hands was difficult. So this brought the communication challenge and also following those rules, which were very many for us, and we couldn't understand how to follow these rules.
Yeah.
So they said all of these rules, you have to adhere to these rules. But sometimes I forgot and they thought I'm rude. Yes. So I have a lot of challenges in socializing with the people. And even on TV, we used to see and hear that you have to follow the rules. And eventually, I came to understand the importance of the rules. So even in the village, I don't have a lot of challenges.
Yeah. Has there been any sensitization on how you can protect yourselves from COVID-19, or you just follow what others are doing?
I can tell you the true information that our government has failed. They don't recognize and they don't remember us. Everything we get from the TV, but the biggest percentage of the deaf community, they don't have the access to TV. So there is no awareness. The only way of communicating is from a deaf person informing the other deaf person. So they should have a way where the deaf can be informed about what is happening. But for now, there is no such plan. Even today, the government is still planning, and we have not seen anything out of these plans. We see things in social media, we hear from the other deaf friends. So the deaf spread information among themselves. But the access is not there for every deaf person to get the information. But for others who have the smartphone, they can access the information through the social media. But we have others who have the TV, the few people. But we have others who don't have the access to information. And also, when the government is announcing, there is no sign language interpreter. But now the question is, how many deafs have the TV to watch the interpreter on TV? Because many people in Kenya, they depend on radio information. Yeah. Very few people have access to TV because some areas, they don't even have the electricity. For example, in the village area, so access of information is limited. And this affects also the deaf people. So the government should plan to make things easier moving forward.
Yeah, and when COVID struck, reports came out that people had stopped seeking healthcare services. But now for the deaf community, how easy or hard is it to even access these services? I imagine, do we have deaf facilities that have sign language interpreters, or do you still go to the general public or general hospitals where probably you will encounter a healthcare professional who doesn't understand what you're trying to say?
In Kenya, I can't remember which hospital have sign language interpreter. But maybe I can hear they are starting to talk about it in Migori County, but now we don't have any interpreters in the hospitals. But maybe Kenyatta National Hospital have one interpreter. But because of Corona, KNH was blocked. The access of hospital was kind of blocked. So you couldn't go to access the services there. But there in the other hospitals, we don't have sign language interpreters. So you have to come up, you have to come with your interpreter, or you go talk to the doctors. So most of the time when you go to the hospital, you find there is no interpreter, so you have to write to the doctor will write back to you. Yes.
Yeah.
And there is a negative attitude which is very high. So they'll try to write, and you can write back to them. And it also varies with who you have met in the hospital. And it also depends whether you can express yourself clearly in the writing.
Yeah.
But we have other deaf who can't even write. So when they come to the hospital to seek the services, how do they get these services? It is very difficult to express themselves through writing. And if the doctor there don't know the sign language and you have no interpreter in the hospital, the condition is worse. Yes. And this affects the deaf community in Corona time and even before in other normal conditions. And you need a doctor who can understand the sign language for you to express all of your feelings and your problems.
Yeah.
And not only during the Corona time, but also in other regular visits.
Yeah, because I imagine if you go with someone else, you may not even say exactly what you're feeling because there's no privacy, right?
Sure. Me, I cannot advocate for interpreters on health issues, no.
Yeah.
When I go to the hospital, I should get the services. What if I want a private service and I don't want anybody else to understand? So in the hospital, I wish we can enter the hospital and communicate with the doctor with one-on-one without an interpreter.
Yeah.
But when we involve an interpreter in a private affair, it is not good. Sometimes you can bring an interpreter and you are a woman, you want to talk about sensitive issues, so you'll feel you don't want to say everything in front of a sign language interpreter. But when the doctor understands the sign language, you'll feel comfortable expressing yourself. And you can also get better services on one-on-one with the doctor. You can say everything, you can explain yourself, you can explain your problem, and the doctor can give you the advice without a third party. Now you'll feel you have access to the best services.
Yeah.
But here in Kenya, we are doing the opposite. But we are hoping and wishing that the deaf community will be provided the services that they want.
Yeah.
But for now, we are still advocating for our right to have doctors who could understand sign language.
I think it's well said, and it's a good place to end this show. In 30 seconds, I'll just welcome you winding remarks. Probably, what do you think is the solution? Because it's your right to health, to access health. What do you think can be done to address this gap, especially the communication barrier in accessing healthcare services in the country?
For me, I feel in the health department, they should have a professional doctor who is also qualified in sign language, because they should be posted in different hospitals because one doctor cannot work in all the hospital and can't solve all the problem. So if government can come up with a program whereby each hospital department have the doctors, not interpreters, but a doctor who can understand sign language, who is qualified, a trained doctor who can understand the sign language. And when a deaf person comes to the hospital, they can communicate with this specialist instead of coming up with interpreter. This can ease the communication. The deaf people can be able to interact and express themselves to the doctor. We are not advocating for sign language in the health department, but we want the Ministry of Health to train some of the doctors to learn some sign language, not basic sign language, but serious training. For example, in TV, we have sign language interpreters. Also, we want the sign language the doctors who could understand signs in hospital. And this can help the deaf people in Kenya. That is all I have to say for now.
Thank you so much, Eunice. Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure having this conversation with you and understanding the challenges that the deaf go through, especially while accessing health services here in Kenya. Thank you so much. I appreciate your presence here.
Thank you.
Okay. And Lucy, thank you so much for also being here. Thank you for making this conversation really easy for us. This is Lucy Mboya, our sign language interpreter right here at the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. We do appreciate your time, Lucy.
Thank you.
And thank you to our viewer for watching this episode of Your Health. We've been speaking with Eunice Mboya and Lucy Mboya on the plight or the challenges that the deaf go through while trying to access healthcare services here in Kenya. We have to wrap it up, but remember, we will see you again next week, same place and same time. I'm Purity Museo, and we love you. Thank you.